Why people lie about having been abused. Now, this is something that doesn't seem obvious at first, but when someone is confronted with the reality of someone who they love or want love from, who perhaps even loves them, having done bad things to them or allowed bad things to happen to them. This can be very difficult to reconcile. It is easier not to deal with. It's not something you really want to confront. It's better left wherever it happened. Best not to touch it. Now, this is unfortunate for several reasons. The most dominant reason being that if it's never confronted or dealt with, it never goes away. So you'll have stuff from 20 years ago that is still active. And I've seen this in other people. I've dealt with it in myself too, obviously, but I've seen it in other people. I've seen when they're talking about growing up and they'll say something. it And the way they say it, the look in their eye, I can tell it's still alive for them. Like it's not processed like other memory. See, like the what I would call like traumatic events, right? I see them as crystalline. Like there's this thing that happens when like real heavy shit is going on, where to me it'll sound like a tuning fork. Like there's like a high pitched ting, and like everything moves really really slow. It's a trip. And I came to see as I was growing up, as I got into my like 20s, right? I started to see like when this happens, this is going to be a memory that's going to like I'll be able to go back into forever. Now I didn't realize at the time that it was all like traumatic memory stuff. Um, Apparently a lot of the things I'm built out of are like trauma reactions, which I truly didn't know, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. But I've seen it in them. This person can't deal with this, and so they lie about it. And it is almost always with like families and caretakers, because that is the hardest thing to confront, how someone who loves me could hurt me. But it's easier just not to deal with that. It's too conflicting. And what do you do with it? Like you can cut out family, but to a lot of people that's not possible. Like I know in a lot of places it's somewhat normal to like cut off family and stuff, but in some circles that is just not an option. And usually these circles are often rife with abuse. Some might say it's a sign of it. I couldn't say. But I can understand where they're coming from. That it's just not a possibility to cut people off. You can't do it. Uh, Better or worse, till death do us part. And that's just the way it is. So then what do you do then? Because like advising someone will just cut off your family, don't go around them anymore. Like that's not something that's possible. You can certainly limit it. You can certainly back off and not have it, not live there. But you know that's just too foreign in certain worlds. And it can be difficult to process. Like I said, I don't even know how to describe it because I've never tried to describe it because I also never really dealt with this stuff in myself. Um, I pretty much just let it lie, and that's just the way it stayed. Like, I wouldn't think about it. It would be so long ago that it didn't happen to me. So, like, am I even lying about it at this point? That happened to a different person. And it's weird how that stuff, it. What's the word? I can't think of the word I want to use here. I, I can't think of something that fits. But there's denial. Like, there is the desire not to confront it, and the reality of confronting it would be too painful, too much at odds with what I know the world to be. Um, you know, I gotta say, like, and it could be because my experiences are very limited. Like, petty drug addiction and like low level violent crime is like my world. Um, and so certain things that seem like certainties to me in life are not certainties in the greater whole of life. And so the people that I run into are more likely to have like histories of violent and sexual abuse. So I see it as something that must be much more common than is reported because it's like I honestly I kind of wager all of them to one extent or another. Like, you don't end up like that by chance. You don't just become a violent criminal because when I was younger, I used to think there was like people that were born with their heads fucked up, like, born a serial killer, and I do not believe that. What do they call it? Like the tabula rasa, the blank slate. Um, I have to imagine that stuff is all made in people, and if you have someone who commits violent crimes, obviously violence has been done to them. There's a concept that's really been bothering me too along those same lines, which is like empathy on the internet. You'll often hear like the extollers of empathy talk about how we have to have empathy for the most wretched people, people that commit violent crimes for no reason, people that commit violent crimes on general citizens, not just people involved in crime. Is that like, if you're involved in like the drug world and like the violent crime world, like, you kind of know what you're getting into. That doesn't mean like, you should set like that you should set them on fire or anything. But like those people, I kind of look at it more like soldiers in a war. And if something bad happens to you, you kind of knew what you were getting yourself into here. But like, if it's just some square that like lives and works a job and takes care of his family, and now you're gonna kick in their front door and hog tie, like, that's unacceptable. In my eyes, you can't do that kind of stuff. um, they I see that as morally reprehensible. um, but anyway, they will say you should have empathy for these people, understand them. And oftentimes, the only people, the extollers of empathy, those who preach empathy, do not have empathy for is the people who say mean things on the internet, which just strikes me as weird because, like, that's such a minor thing. And it's obviously the same thing as the violent criminal. The reason these people say mean things on the internet is because someone in their life has said mean things in similar ways. This is just what you do when someone is emotionally vulnerable. When they were vulnerable, people were mean to them. So they, in turn, are mean to people when they see vulnerability, right? Like, that's pretty, like, this is just the way this path goes. But because people saying mean things on the internet affects them, it is the greatest threat to America in existence. Now, they've never seen somebody get their front smashed in with the butt of a pistol, so that's just something that happens in movies. Like, that is not real to them. They have never seen, like, an area just covered in blood. Um, that is not real to them. A lot of these very disturbing acts, they're not things they've ever witnessed or had to experience. So they can have a tremendous degree of empathy for those people because they don't have to see it as a real thing. They don't have to understand the victims of that stuff, but they very much understand the victims of people who say mean things on the internet. And that just leaves me raw. I don't like hypocrisy. And like I obviously don't like saying mean things over the internet. I think it's fucked up. I wouldn't advise doing it. I got all kinds of problems with it, but people are gonna do it because people got fucked up lives and they express that shit. Like, and it's out of all the terrible things a human can do, is that really the worst? Like, is that really something we need to worry about as a society when there are so many other serious problems still going on? You know, I think that's kind of out of proportion. But anyway, this is completely off topic, and I meant to be talking about people lying about abuse. But, you know, nobody's perfect. But the weird thing when a person has the opportunity for denial and like the desire for denial, but they don't want it to be true. So it's not true. Like, you just don't confront it. And it never goes away, it stays active. It's a different type of memory that doesn't get processed like other memory. Um, it, like, with myself, it is a type of memory where, like, I stuff that happened 30 years ago will seem closer in time than stuff that happened 2 weeks ago. Like, the sensory information, what I was thinking about, all that stuff is still very, very vivid. It never goes away. And like the sounds of it and what was going on at that time, if obviously if like similar things in it are happening, like similar noises are happening in real life, like those two things can kind of cross over. Like, when I first read Slaughterhouse 5, I didn't realize Billy Pilgrim becoming unstuck in time was just traumatic memory. Like, that didn't click with me at first. uh, I took it quite literally, and I'm guessing the guy was more talking about post-traumatic stress than he was actually becoming unstuck in time. The dude was just completely insane. Well, not, not insane, but not well either. But there is this, especially because abuse is so often tied in with families and people you are close to, people you don't want that to be true. It just becomes easier to lie. Like, I knew this one guy who was literally like triple homicide, and he's like, nothing bad ever happened to me. Perfectly normal family. That's but I understand what he's doing. He doesn't want to dishonor his family. He doesn't want to say anything bad about his family. Like, I've already brought them enough shame. There's no reason to go dragging this stuff out, too. And to an extent, I can respect that. The problem is, it gives people a false expectation. Like, it is promoting the lies, which I cannot. I have to go against that to an extent. Um, I don't think dragging personal business out in front of everyone is necessarily the way to go either. That has become far too popular, in my opinion. And, you know, you want to keep things quiet in my eyes. Uh, that's just the. I mean, maybe the world has changed. Maybe people want their business to be out there, but like, if people know shit about you, they're gonna use it against you. That's the best I can tell you. Uh, in my experience, that's what people do with information. Is if they have information about you, they have information about your weaknesses and where they can target you and how they can hurt you. You know, but so there's also the fight against that. But you know, if you never deal with something, it will stay there forever. And like, it's funny because what is it like that movie The Grudge? When like a horrible violent act happens, it leaves a mark on a place. Well, I can't tell you whether it leaves a mark on a place or not, but I can tell you it leaves a mark on a person. And especially when it's people that you want to love you, when that person does love you, like, this is what people who love you do. Now that's a difficult thing to unlearn. Some might say impossible. Like, and that sets a person up for all kinds of instability in life when that's what you expect. Like, it's unfortunate, but I'm gonna shut the fuck up now. Take it for what it's worth.